name is Kim Harney, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the changing ideals of art through the story of Nathan Sawaya, the Lego brick artist. So, a couple questions I'm going to be asking throughout the presentation. What is art? Has our idea of art changed over time? Does technical skill matter? And lastly, could a children's toy be considered art? In order to answer some of these questions, I decided to do a little digging. And so I've brought for you today a century's worth of quotes on what is art. From 1900, the aim of art is beauty. That beauty is recognized by the enjoyment it gives, and that artistic enjoyment is a good and important thing because it is enjoyment. Thus, what is considered the definition of art is no definition at all, but only a shuffle to justify existing art. From 1917. As a general statement, it might be said that art is simply the response that our life calls forth in those who are sensitive and gifted to receive, and also to transmit impressions in terms of the various mediums: music, painting, sculpture, and literature. From 1923. The thing that looks art to a person who thinks that it is art is art. Art belongs to everyone who looks for it. You may find a great sculptor in the barber shop or in a tailor shop. A master hand, that is art, no matter where we find it. 1935. A work of art, therefore, is not the product of genius alone. It is a cooperative enterprise between author, audience, geography, philosophy of life, and the innumerable winds of fashion, which, as far as we are consciously concerned, blow whither they listeth. 1940. To me, art is a function. Like religion and sex, it's a natural evolution of the human being. That it radiates from the brain obviously limits it to a comparatively small proportion of people. 1952. I do, however, deny that the term work of art is thus restricted in the ordinary use of laymen and most critics. For any artifact, whatever may, in certain circumstances, also be a work of art. It may be valued for its own sake, as well as for any function it was designed to fulfill. Thus, one may admire the lines of a yacht or a jet plane, the arrangement of a garden, the style of a gown, as well as the qualities of those objects of the alleged fine arts: poems, pictures, statues, musical compositions, buildings. 1960. While no one should venture to tell the artist what he or she should do and how he should work, we may remind him that he can still be true to tradition, can pay his debt to the past by doing for today what his predecessors did for their day, namely, translating the then new concepts and assumptions, the then new worldviews into graphic symbols and designs. 1970, from Clement Greenberg. The notion of art put to the simplest test of experience proves to be not skillful making, as the ancients defined it, but an act of mental distancing, an act that can be performed even without the help of sense perception. Everything can be subjected to such distancing, and therefore converted into something that takes effect as art. 1975, from Philip Fisher. By this, everything we usually understand, even crucifixes, even what was once a sword, even a soup can, even a urinal, but the final even has to be reserved. Even art can be distanced to produce art. 1980. Art always had and still retains a certain air of mystery, and the double sense of mystere and métier, of comprising at once a cult and a skill. Thus the artist must first of all be a technician. 1996. Art has become critical, critiquing both culture and society. It has become necessary to learn the language of the world of art and the critics in order to gain insights into contemporary works of art. Today, a work of art might be looked at as a document. What does it have to say? 2003. From my perspective, understanding art is not just a frill, an adornment that sets those who have it apart from those who don't. Such knowledge is a central part of a rigorous education that makes us smarter, more insightful, more sensitive to what is occurring around us. In other words, better educated people who are more capable of working towards democratic, egalitarian social change. this brings us to Nathan Sawaya. This is one of his famous sculptures, Metamorphosis. It's a kind of a personal transformation for him and a little about his personal experience. So, just a little bit about Nathan. He was a lawyer. He was a very unhappy lawyer, and so he decided to quit his job, become a full time artist, despite all of the criticism of his friends and family telling him that he was crazy. And now he is decently famous. He has a beautiful show called The Art of the Brick, which travels around all over the country and shows all of his different Lego sculptures. Nathan also suffers from depression, so some of his art does have a little bit of a darker theme, but a lot of it has a very hopeful message, such as this one, Metamorphosis. It's a transformation of him. He recreates a lot of famous art, including the Mona Lisa, Starry Night. He creates big, beautiful sculptures such as Tyrannosaurus Rex. He creates his own artwork. He has a series in the park where he creates little Lego people and has them, hanging onto light posts and picnic tables and things, and people just kind of discover them as he goes. So I wanted to show you this video that really explains his artwork. Just a quick little video about his show, The Art of the Brick.
I experimented with other types of media. I did sculptures out of clay and wire, more traditional art media. But eventually I got back to this toy, and I just thought about this toy from my childhood, and I challenged myself, could I create large-scale sculptures using this childhood toy? And I wanted to use those rectangular bricks to create something more, not just what was on the front of the box, not just cars and trucks, but really use them to create some emotional sculptures. And I focused on using Lego to create these human forms and really put some emotion into it and take Lego out of the toy store and into the contemporary art world. I'm so excited to have the exhibition at Art Science Museum at Marina Bay Sands. The Art Science Museum itself is just an architectural masterpiece. With the separate fingers, we've been able to take the exhibition and really do something unique, and that's create different galleries with different themes, so that certain galleries take certain sculptures out of the exhibition and kind of group them thematically and give the viewer a variety of aspects as they pass through the entire exhibition. This exhibition is my largest exhibition to date and has a wide range of art, from a body of work that I've done over several years. So you see some of my earlier pieces, which are very representational, some of my more thematic pieces that have to do with the emotion that I put into the pieces. But one of the great things of working with Lego bricks is that people connect to the artwork almost on a different level. People have played with Lego, or their kids have played with it before, and so when they see artwork created out of it, there's something about it. They relate to it in a different way than they might say a more traditional sculpture out of stone. Well, I think art complements science in many ways. In my particular profession, I use Lego bricks, and that's my medium of choice. But that brings with it this need for a bit of engineering, because Lego is more than just stacking some bricks together. There really has to be some math behind it as well. And so it really plays well. There's art, there's science, to bring something that's really an engineering tool and try and create art out of it, these artistic sculptures. And that has a lot to do with, I think the same themes that play in the Art Science Museum.
So when watching through the video and looking at all of the different pieces of artwork that he did, I want to focus on one series that he did, which was with photographer Dean West. So as you can see here, this is a picture of a man in a swimming pool, and what may not be as noticeable is that the towel hanging behind him is actually made out of Legos. So Sawaya would make the Legos and Wes would stage and take the photographs. This is another one entitled Bus. And if you can kind of pick out which is the Lego here, it is the dog that she's holding, and they're both waiting on the bus, obviously not looking at each other, which could be analyzed in a lot of different ways as well. This one is Hotel. This one's even harder to find the Legos, but if you look up top, you'll see there are two clouds, one on the left, one on the right, and those are Legos. So how they put them in there is just wild, and they took this photograph. This is a collection of all of the different props used in these photographs. You can kind of see in the exhibit behind them, the photographs are surrounding the Legos that are in the center. And the one that I want to focus on and analyze a little bit is Red Dress. So this is a close-up of Red Dress. As you can see, it is made out of Legos. It has a trailing, hanging vine of Legos kind of behind it, almost as if the dress has a lot of movement and it's walking and it's disintegrating as it's moving. And so I'm thinking of all of Nathan's Legos and his art and all of these words that were in the 10 quotes that I picked from centuries worth of art quotes, and topics like beauty, enjoyment, audience engagement. Is it trendy, functional? This dress is actually kind of functional. Translating new concepts, mysterious, technical, using language. Can you read it like a document? What does it say? Is it sensitive to the world? Is it insightful? And when I think of the art that he produces, I think all of those concepts are really true for this. And so, has Lego changed, or has art changed over time? Our definition, obviously, we know from different movements it's become much more inclusive. I'm not sure if this Lego photograph would have been considered art a century ago, but certainly now it is. And when we look at this particular photograph, it's really interesting. They have on the billboard here, "On the Run." And so what the artist and the photographer say is that in the story we'd written for ourselves, she leaves home in this gorgeous creation, a confident, attractive woman about to enjoy a night out. But in the work, on the other side of that night out, we see that confident identity has been stripped away. Dean and I wanted the wintry wind to be howling, tearing at the dress, scattering its fragments. I created a dress before, but nothing like this. Getting the flow of the fabric just right was technically very difficult, but Dean never tired of talking about it or finding ways to make the sculpture photo even better. So you can see in the bottom right hand corner, there's the taillight that he was mentioning, and it almost looks like either maybe she is on the run, or maybe someone has left her, or maybe she's waiting and the wind is whipping at her. So looking at the photograph, you can come up with a lot of different scenarios. And you can read into it what you will. You can look at the colors, right? It's obviously nighttime. The movie theater is lit up. Maybe you have a backstory about the gentleman sitting there at the photo booth. Why is she missing a coat? Why is she dressed up in the first place? So, looking at all of at this particular piece of artwork, but looking at it as a whole, he has a lot of symbolic meaning and interest to his artwork that I just find really fascinating. And so to kind of end with a quote from this decade, I'll leave you with a quote from Nathan Sawalha that he wrote in his book. "Art is all around us, in commerce, in the creativity, in the imagination of the everyday. Art is not optional." I'll say it again in capital letters. Art is not optional.